Salayalo Makwidira. The time is 9:35 Central African time. Very, very beautiful morning here in Johannesburg, and we are at the back end of the show. And we'll be heading over to the UK, where nearly 900 people have been arrested at a pro-Palestine action rally in London a few days ago. It was one of the largest protest crackdowns in recent memory, and among the detained, organizers say were priests, war veterans, retired teachers, healthcare workers, and even descendants of Holocaust survivors. The Metropolitan Police of London accused demonstrators of supporting a proscribed organization under the Terrorism Act. But rights groups, including Amnesty International, say the protest was peaceful and that police used excessive force to silence dissent. The arrests come as Israel intensifies its assault and genocide in Gaza, which academics and UN experts continue. And I think at this point can all agree that it is a genocide. And critics say the UK government is now criminalizing solidarity with Palestine. And to help us unpack the legal and human rights implications of this, we are joined by Sabah Al-Mukhtar. He's a partner and president at the Arab Lawyers Network out in the UK. Assalamu alaikum, Sabah. Jazakallah so much for joining us. Really, really appreciate you giving us your time this morning.
Alaikum salam to you and your listeners and viewers.
I think first and foremost, I would like to kickstart the conversation with a bit of context and the legal grounds to some of these arrests. The Metro Police of London says these arrests were for supporting a banned group under UK law. Can you unpack a bit on what that means and how broad and far-reaching is this Terrorism Act and why is it being applied here? I know it's a multifaceted question, but I think, we can begin there and you can just dissect it for us.
Thank you very much. In Britain, we have the Terrorism Act, which is legislated to deal with terrorist and terrorism acts in Britain, threats and what have you. But it is, as the name indicates, it's regarding terrorism. And terrorism is defined in the law when you cause harm to people. What happened is that there is a Palestine Action. It's a civil organization. There are people who are objecting to the genocide which is being carried out in Palestine, Gaza, and the West Bank, with the support of the British government. So this group has begun to take action against Israeli companies which operates in the UK in production of arms, or British companies which were colluding with them, and other institutions which is supporting it. One of the major things that happened is that this group have gone into one of the air bases, Price Norton, north of London, where they went and painted red color on two of the military planes to show that this is the blood of the Palestinians. Based on that action, the government put to the parliament that this organization, Palestine Action, should be proscribed as a terrorist organization. The ordinary law in England provides for if you do any damage to any property, then the law will deal with it. If they damage the building or the cars or the airplanes or somebody's property, you can deal with them under the ordinary law, and you can charge the people who caused the damage, whether by penalty or compensation, whatever. The government decided in this instance only. We have other organizations which take action, like people regarding the oil, regarding the shale oil, regarding the environment, regarding the traffic diversions. The government chose only the Palestine Action and put it to Parliament that they should be proscribed as a terrorist organization. The Parliament passed this decision, so it became a proscribed organization that you are not supposed to support, announce, join them, agree with them, or anything of that sort. So they were treated just like ISIS, just like the IRA before, just like any other terrorist organization which goes around killing people or hurting people, in addition to taking action against what they think or they believe it is wrong. Now, what's happening, the genocide that's happening in Gaza and Palestine, generally speaking, has made the British public, the ordinary English people, they're not Palestinians, they are not Arabs, they are not Muslims, to not accept that. And for the last 2 years, there has been 300 demonstrations throughout the UK against this decision, because this decision equates a civil organization with terrorist organizations, which is an absolute ludicrous. So people started, in order to show their dissatisfaction with this decision, you have old people who go in front of the parliament, what's called Parliament Square. They just sit down on a chair or on the grass, carrying a placard which says, "I support Palestine action." According to the police, technically speaking, and this is correct, that this is a breaking of the law, because the law says you cannot say "I support them." So initially they arrested about 400 people 3 weeks ago. Now they have arrested almost 900 people, and this is the biggest number in the history of Britain that the police have arrested civil people who are demonstrating peacefully. In that number, there is nothing in history of Britain that they have so many people arrested for taking just civil action. They were peaceful, they were sitting on the grass with these placards in their hands. Now, this has obviously met with discontent from the UN, all the human organizations, and in addition to that, now this law is before the English court. The court is going to look at it, I think, in November, to decide whether it breaches the human rights laws, it breaches the ordinary law, it breaches the humanity, and all the other issues before the court.
And I want to touch a bit on that. Maybe from a freedom of expression point of view, we've been seeing, human rights groups like Amnesty International and others say this is effectively criminalizing free speech legally. And you have a better understanding than me on this. Is simply holding a sign that says "I support Palestine action" enough to constitute a terror offense?
Well, they're saying that, technically speaking, it is based on the decision of the government, which says that if you support Palestine action in any way, wearing a T-shirt, carrying a placard, sending an email, putting anything on the media, it makes you a criminal. And this is absolutely ludicrous, because the freedom of speech is that you can say what you want, you can have your thoughts, your own ideas, you can say the government is bad, you can say all the laws of England are bad, you can say that the members of parliament are not honestly dealing with their job, you can say that some of the ministers are bad people, you can say anything. You don't become a terrorist, because terrorism, it has to cause harm to people. Palestine action has not hurt a single person. So it actually defies the concept of terrorism. This is only an expression. Maybe the expression of view has caused material damage, paint on cars, on buildings, blocking the road, causing harm to the traffic or whatever. This is not terrorism. This is damage, and damage, we have enough laws in England to deal with it. You don't prescribe an opinion, it doesn't matter what it is, as a terrorism act. The parliament has decided, if you express your view of support of an organization which is expressing a view in an action way, because people have got fed up. We had millions of people going on the streets and nobody listens. The government doesn't listen. The police try and control the crowds. And I'm not accusing the police of anything. The police are actually, they are trying to do their best. And they feel very embarrassed that they are doing this, but they have to apply the law as it is.
Mm,
The last arrest, there was a claim that there was violence against the police and what have you. And this is totally unsupported by anybody other than the view of the police. Because in fact, all the policemen, every policeman would carry a personal camera on him. And people have asked the police to show any pictures where people were attacking the police. But I can tell you, when the police comes, you have five or six policemen or women. They come to an old person who is an 85-year-old man or a 65-year-old blind on a wheelchair carrying
mm,
a placard. You get six policemen or five to come and take this person to the van of the police. So of course the demonstrators around, they would call on the police. They say, "Shame on you! You shouldn't be doing that. He's just expressing a view. He's not doing any harm. He's not breaking any law." Of course, he is breaking a law, the law that the decision of the government which said Palestine action, if you support it, is a criminal act. So the police have to arrest them. But I can move into a different side of it.
mm,
This decision is so incredibly difficult to implement. First of all, the police had no capacity to arrest all those people at the same time. So they couldn't take them to the police stations because police stations wouldn't take all that numbers. They put tents outside police stations. They interviewed people on the curbside. And then, because the whole thing has to go to the Crown Prosecution Service, Crown Prosecution Service said to they issued statements that they will not be able to deal with that number of people in the short time that is required by the law, because they can't detain a person more than 48 hours. They said, we cannot deal with these issues, with these numbers within this time. The courts went further by saying, if the police and the Crown Prosecution Service needs that much time, we will probably need five times longer time to deal with these issues. So it's a crazy situation. It's really unbelievably. That's why you don't find anybody on any level who finds this acceptable decision or attitude by the government, uh, probably aside from Israel and their supporters.
mm, mm, mm. Do you see, this setting a dangerous precedent for political protest in Britain? Could we ultimately find ourselves in a place where other activist movements now face the same kind of treatment and persecution from the authorities?
But of course, this is the biggest worry because it goes beyond the Palestine action. This is an attitude which is changing. Britain has never uh, uh, checked on people's views and ideas. You could have the British Communist Party. You could have people who agrees with IRA. You have people who agrees with the homosexuals. People are against them. You have people who have views about the environment. You have people about everything. You deal with them under the ordinary law. But now Britain is beginning to use the Terrorism Act on immigration issues, and they are combining both the Immigration and the Terrorism Act in their attitude. But the ordinary public, the ordinary English people or British people, fear that this is a creeping dictatorship on thought. This
Mm,
is police thought. So everybody is saying, what are we? Are we now in Moscow? Or are we in America? Indeed, unfortunately, this is the precedent being set by Donald Trump. Donald Trump is now sending the ICE in the streets to catch people, and you don't know why. You don't know. They are American citizens, but because of their ideas, their thoughts, their expression of views. So this attitude is creeping, unfortunately, from America into Europe, which is now you have a bigger movement of the right who are against variety of things, and they want the state to control the thought and the speech of the people. This is why there is, all those demonstrators, the 900 people who were arrested, I don't think there was probably any of them who was an Arab or a Palestinian or a
Mm.
Muslim. Probably there were some Muslims and imams, and there were vicars, there were Holocaust survivors, but they are all British. They are all British people. Those people feel so strongly about the issue, not only on Gaza and Palestine, but they fear that this creeping control of thought and behavior on anything else. Tomorrow, the government can say those people who are demonstrating against regarding environmental issues, and they block the road or they paint something on the train, then they are terrorists. And the next thing you're going to have, if you criticize the government, then you are
Mm.
being classified as a terrorist. And this is totally contrary to the concept of the Terrorism Act, totally contrary to the freedom of expression, which is protected by law and the Constitution in this country and indeed internationally. The Human Rights Charter, the UN Charter, all the UN agreements and treaties guarantees the freedom of thought and the freedom of expression, provided
Mm.
you don't hurt people. And
Mm.
this is where the government, I think, will probably lose on this issue. The last time I can recall was when Mrs. Thatcher imposed on Britain what's called the poll tax, i.e., the local tax which people pay is based on the number of people who live in the house. So if you have a household with 7 people and the other with 3 people, the one with the 7 will pay double what they paid in the 3 house.
Mm.
That law, again, there were demonstrations and there were in Trafalgar Square. The police, probably older people will remember, there was use of Molotov cocktail, and the police were using horses, and people were arrested, but nothing on the level of this one. And then it was not treated as a terror under the Terrorism Act. It
Mm.
was on the law and order, the ordinary law. Now the government is using the Terror Act and widening its application on anything. So the government, on this practice, the government tomorrow can put to the parliament that they will decide anybody who expresses, say, an Islamic view or an anti LGBT view or regarding the environment as a terrorist organization. And this is
Mm.
what's scaring the people. And this is what making the legal and human rights organization feel extremely uncomfortable. And that's why there is condemnation, as I said, from every side. There is nobody who supports it other than the government. Even the police have not expressed a view on it. They said we have to implement the law. So
Mm.
when they are arresting people, and you can see it if you're watching the arrest thing, when you have 5 or 6 policemen arresting one man or woman, a demonstrator, and you have another 4 or 5 protecting those policemen from the demonstrations, who the demonstrators find it totally immoral, unethical, objectionable. So they would try and shame the police. And the police feel extremely uncomfortable with that attitude, because that's not how the police want to behave against old people, blind and disabled and what have you, who are just sitting on the grass with a placard.
Mm. 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 You spoke about, this law being in front of the courts right now, being challenged. What's the latest on that front? The countering this terrorism act.
Initially, the case was put to the court, and the court refused. but then it went to the Court of Appeal, and the Court of Appeal said no, the court must look into the legality of this decision of the government. And I can't remember exactly the date it is set, probably the 8th of November or something like that. But in November, there will be a hearing in the court whereby the lawyers for Huda Amouri and the other people from Palestine Action, their lawyers are going to present their issues to the court on the basis that, first of all, this description of Palestine Action as as a terrorist organization actually violates the law, the terrorism law, because terrorism law has a requirement before you can classify an act as terrorism. Secondly, they are putting the view that this is contrary to the European Human Rights Convention and the freedom of expression, the right to express, and they are saying that the actions which has been taken, it clearly shows that no one agrees with it. Even the media, they report. Of course, they would have to put, because even in England, the media and all, including the BBC, they all have to toe the line of the government to a certain degree. So even those, they have to report it, and they are saying that it is so difficult, but uh, they find this. They would report, for instance, what the police said, that there was an attack on the police, and the police have not produced any evidence to that front.
No, I think we're going to leave it on that front, Sabah. Thank you so much for unpacking. I think this very, very important turn of events for us. And I think it's very, very concerning that the UK British government is going, through this route because, the UK has always positioned itself as the leaders when it comes to human rights and the protections of, rights like freedom of speech and freedom of expression. And just because of a genocide happening in Israel and one that everyone sees, we find ourselves where we are today. So I think a very, very concerning turn of events. Thank you so much, though, for unpacking it for us. Really appreciate it. There you go.
Thank you.
That was Sabah Al-Mukhtar, partner at the Arab Lawyers Network out in the UK, helping us understand the scale and significance of this mass arrest of pro-Palestine demonstrators, many of them just normal British people, because I think, the intention could have probably been, or the thought could have been, the targets would probably be, Muslim minorities, and other black and brown people who might be supporting the cause of the Palestinian people. But I think it kind of backfired. It's British people, it's war veterans, it's people that have survived or are of descendants of those that survived the Holocaust. It's priests, it's nuns, and people that would represent traditional Britain, for lack of a better word. And I think it's concerning that one of the countries that for the longest of time has prided itself as one of the leaders when it comes to respecting of human rights and freedoms of expression and freedom of speech is essentially cracking down on its citizens because of a genocide, because of a war that is being perpetuated by a Zionist Israeli pariah state that is thousands of kilometers away. So, as the crackdown continues, I think the question remains, where exactly is the line between security and silencing dissent? And what does this mean for the future of free expression in Britain? And it's moments like this that, for the most part, make you appreciate being in a country like South Africa, where, despite the challenges that we have, no one is arresting you for having a placard that says, I support Palestine solidarity or I support Palestine action. No one. And if they do arrest you or if they do inconvenience you in any way, all hell will break loose on them here in South Africa. So it really does put a lot of things in perspective. I mean, just look at the US and what's happening in that part of the world. Slowly, freedoms are being chipped away. And I think it'll be interesting to see where we find ourselves 10, 15 years from now, because the foundations and building blocks of a totalitarian state is kind of starting to show itself. What's next? You can't say anything bad about the government or the president or the king or whoever's in power in the day. Let's appreciate our country. We've come to the end of today's edition of News and Views. Thank you so much for staying with us for the past 2 hours. It's been another insightful, brilliant, well curated one. I'll be back with you again tomorrow for the Thursday edition of the show. Yeah, from myself, Salailo, Puti, Nasreen, and everyone that made today's show a possibility. It's Shap Shap. See you again tomorrow.